competitive pricing and an awareness that price drives demand.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Growth and Scaling Podcast. This is your host, Todd Westra, and I am so excited to bring you to this interview. This guest today is amazing, is an amazing founder, has been in business for himself for almost his entire life. Literally helped his parents with a family business when he was 7 or 8, going into stores and checking prices and doing price analysis on specific products in different stores. I can only imagine these kids out there, they're doing this. But he would do that and then resell data before data was even a thing. Now that data is a thing, he's updated and rebuilt his business in a way that's very different from his parents, in that he is now taking that data to retailers, and you're going to hear the whole story in this interview. But it is a fun founder journey, and the way that he started in the industry and the way that he's still in the industry is fascinating to me, because he's been kind of running this analysis and these analysis on pricing literally his whole life. And so he is the specialist. Awesome founder journey. You're going to love this interview. I can't wait to catch up with you on the flip side. Thanks for being here. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Growth and Scaling Podcast. I am really excited for today's interview because of the guest, first of all, and his experience, second of all, and what he brings to the table to clients trying to optimize their pricing formats and everything like that. It's a huge deal of what this man does, and so I'm going to let him jump into it. Today, we have Tim Ouimet. Tim, jump on in. Let us know who you are and who you like to help.
Thanks, Todd. I'm one of those guys that I didn't go to college, found my way into a career in technology, began working in a family business when I was 7 years old. My parents started a company
Nice.
where they sent people into stores to collect the everyday selling price of different household products. And so, so at 7, I was one of their corporate spies going into the stores to collect pricing.
That is hilarious.
And so it gave me an early education into competitive pricing and an awareness that price drives demand. And
that is so funny. So they literally. So what kind of store were your parents like consultants? Tell me how this works. Back up one more step, because that is absolutely funny. So they would send you in to do some price competitive analysis and then figure out how they wanted to price it?
Yeah. So my dad had an idea. He was an entrepreneur. He had been fired from his job. He worked in wholesale. And he always knew that retailers were asking him to tell him what the other guys were charging for the same product. And so he'd make notes of that, and he'd always share these notes with his clients, and here's what the other guy's charging, and they really liked it.
Oh my God.
So when he got fired, he thought, I'm going to take the severance pay and see if I can get this company off the ground. And this is back in 1973. So This is before the personal computer, before everything's pen and paper, and we'd go into the stores. He put together a list of about 1,000 items, and we'd go into drugstores, grocery stores, mass merchants like Kmart, Target, Walmart, and we'd shop the store and then compile the data, and he'd sell it back to the competitors in the marketplace. And
that is awesome.
This is what I grew up doing. And
wow.
And it was interesting because that's against the backdrop of the 1970s. And with the inflationary pressures, and I saw firsthand how his business grew and some of the scaling challenges growing through demand like that. Like everyone needed what he had, and
that is so awesome.
Yeah, so it was a good growth experience seeing that, and then seeing some of the challenges that came later, like the personal computer came along and other technologies that his competitors picked up on, and the paradigm in the market changed, and he was no longer able to operate at the scale he was before. And I saw his business declined in size too, and how it
right.
created a challenge that they really weren't able to overcome, and and so now we're effectively the next generation of that.
That is such an awesome story. I love that founder story. I had a paper out when I was 7 or 8, and that was my first business, I say. But that outdoes everything I've done. I love that story. That is so awesome. So as you how does that translate to what you do now? I know you're kind of alluding that you're in the next generation of this. What are you doing right now, and who are you helping with this product information?
Yeah, so we help retailers and brands
with
this information, and it really my brother and I started the company together. So we both vowed that we would never work for my parents because it was such a tough business that we saw anything would be easier than this, and so we both said no. And then my brother was pursuing a PhD in chemical engineering.
Wow.
And theoretical physics. And so he started calling me going, that business we said we'd never get involved with? I've got a really interesting idea. And this is against the backdrop of a data foundation that was being built in the industry. So retailers had adopted the Universal Product Code, or the UPC.
Right.
They had cash registers that could actually scan the UPC.
Right.
And we saw that and we said, oh my God, they're going to start to use this information in order to price the products. Because why would you go to the expense of having someone physically go into a store to observe a competitor's price? That's just a reference for what your shoppers are going to think is fair.
Right.
The only reason to do it, to understand what they think is fair. And so why would you go to that expense when you can look at how they buy the products, at different prices going across the scanner, and so we said that we need to start a company. We didn't understand yet that the data didn't really fully exist.
Yeah, interesting.
Retailers said they had the data, but they didn't even have data warehouses at the time.
Wow.
And so we had to really wait for the data to catch up.
Wow.
And be there for us, and we were lucky not to go bankrupt in the process.
Yeah, well, two brothers together can make a lot of things happen.
I lived in a garage for 5 years.
There you go. There you go. You're one of those kind of guys. I get it.
Yeah, that's where it was.
That's awesome. So moving forward then, I mean, how does that, so I understand the whole UPC thing, and now we're moving into more data being passed through QRs and things like that. How does that data translate into your ability to capture it and package it and give it to a retailer who's trying to figure out where to put things, how to price it?
So the challenge is really how to understand human values. How do people value products? What are their preferences? And everyone, you could do a survey and say, do you like this one or that one? And they'll tell you one thing, but their purchasing behavior will usually be different.
Right.
And it's especially surveys are especially unreliable when it comes to asking people what price they'd like to pay.
Right.
And so you really need a data-driven process, or some sort of a process that can work with the data that you have and infer and take a guess. Historically, retailers develop incredible intuition about this. So if you go and talk to a buyer about pricing for a product, what we learned early on is you're better to ask a buyer about his opinion of what a shopper will pay than you are to ask a shopper what they will pay. You'll get a much better answer. And so we started, that kind of led to some ideas about reverse engineering, different ideas of how to create data, effectively survey the buyers in a more and use data to basically survey them and see what, through the competitive pricing data, and see what they thought was a good price. So we started with some analytics early on, and what we're doing today, what's different. So we built a company that was credited with being the first retail price optimization company.
Cool.
And we did that in the mid 90s, started it, sold it in 2006. We then the smartphone comes out a few years later.
Right. I was going to say that's about the same time right then and there. Yeah.
Yeah. And what we saw was that meant there's going to be a new data foundation.
Yes.
And this new data foundation enables bidirectional communication, which we've never had before. So we've got this happening. There's also retailers are taking their offering online. So now you can see, it's not that if you're a retailer that you made your prices available online, it's that your competitor made their prices available online. Gotcha. And so now your shoppers can be in your store and see that your price is lower or higher.
Yeah.
So suddenly it creates it's a paradigm shift.
Yeah, very big. Yeah.
The cost to collect online data is like 15,000 times less than the cost to collect in-store data.
100%. Yeah.
So suddenly it becomes efficient to do a complete census of the market.
Huh.
And it's possible you hit a point where you've collected all of the pricing data in the market. And now, well, that opens up all kinds of new opportunities for what you can do. So you've got a paradigm shift on the transparency of pricing in the marketplace. Yeah. It's possible to know every price at every store, every week kind of thing, sometimes every hour. And then you've got a paradigm shift with the cell phone or the smartphone where it's possible for bidirectional communication. So people can, rather than guess what people value, do you like organic or gluten-free over non? Now you can actually ask them, and you can present them with different prices. And if they buy it, you can give them a discount and say, would you buy it at this price? Would you buy it at that price? And if they close the deal, you've got a sale. Now you've got validation. So this is the world we're driving into, and it gets really interesting.
So we've got this whole paradigm shift, and I'm seeing multiple paradigm shifts of how this data is gathered, how it's being used, how it's being delivered to the clients. This is an awesome product. Who's your ideal client? I mean, are you really servicing more the product producers or the wholesale distributors, or who's kind of your perfect avatar that you're trying to search for?
We've got over 300, I think it's 350 retail clients today.
Cool.
So most of our clients are retailers. We have 7 of the world's top 10 retailers as clients.
Cool.
So it's largely the big guys that where the value proposition turns on, and it's kind of like any B2B software company. You start with the big guys,
right?
And then you can go, once you've got your process, if you've been able to successfully generalize your solution and encapsulate it into a software product, then you can scale down to the smaller guys.
Interesting. Hey, this is Todd again. Thanks so much for enjoying this episode of the podcast. I am so glad you're here, and I just wanted to take a few seconds to tell you about a program that we have assembled with a lot of our podcast guests and a lot of people who are listening to the show who are feeling the same way that they do. There's a recurring theme. You'll hear a lot of these founders talk about, I couldn't have done it without my team. I couldn't have done it without a support group of peers. I couldn't have done it without having someone to talk to that understood my feeling of isolation as an operator of my business. You see, you're not alone. It is hard running a business, and it's even harder when you know you can't express all your deepest concerns and frustrations with your executive team. It makes them nervous. It gets them scared. You don't want scared people on your executive team. So where do you turn? The Captain's Council is where you turn. The Captain's Council, it is an organization that we are put together with podcast guests, as well as people who are listening who are in the same boat. You see, peers are the only ones that can give you the type of empathy, the type of advice that only a founder or operator know and understand. Go check it out at captainscouncil.com. I know you're going to love what you see there. We have put together an organizational structure that has small group settings, a global community of founders and operators as well as monthly and quarterly in-person events. You're going to love what you see there. I can't wait for you to check it out, and enjoy the rest of this episode. So tell me about that journey. How have you now been able to take this into some of these large companies and grow your business? Now, we're going to talk, just take a step back now that we know what you do, who you help.
Yeah.
Tell us about your growth journey. I mean, you had an exit in 2006 to SAP, which is a massive success. Congratulations. Yeah. And then you went on and started another program. How have you come since 2008 or so when you started that to now in your growth journey? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, when we started, we actually thought we were going to build a B2C company.
Interesting.
And we called it Shopping Scout. And the product we were calling Shopping Scout. And our intention was to build, take the online data that we were getting.
Yeah.
Take the data from my parents' company that they were collecting in store, blend it together, and provide people with an app where they could shop, manage their routine shopping across different stores in the marketplace. And we saw that I was able to shop items, put a list together in minutes by scanning UPCs from the products in the cupboard, press a button, and it would tell me, here's the single best store you should shop at.
That's
and
so funny.
One week to another, based on the different incentives that were out there in the marketplace, it would change from go to these two stores and save 50%, go to this one store and save 25%.
Wow.
So the savings were significant. And really what we've been trying to do is, there's a conflict in the industry between manufacturer and retailer.
Yeah.
And it really involves the money that's paid to incentivize the sales. And there's inefficiencies from that. And really what we're trying to do is take a step at unwinding those inefficiencies and create a more dynamic process. If you ask a retailer, do you have a relationship with your shopper? They would say no. If you ask a manufacturer, do you have a relationship with your shopper? They'd say no. And it's because they both lack this information of what the shopper really values. And so we were thinking of a play that, how about we create a bi-directional interaction with the shopper where they tell us what they want. And then you can feed that to industry, create a closed loop cycle. And now you instead of a race to the bottom, like all of the food companies out in the marketplace today are really funded by PE companies, where it's the model in the industry is high volume, low cost. And by doing that, they really create a lot of unhealthy food in the process.
I believe it, yeah.
And so an example could be that the delta between the cheapest option is, or not the cheapest, but a good cheap option is 20%, 25% of the healthiest option. So all of a sudden it creates a situation where there's more constituents interested in the shopper having good health. You've got insurance companies and others that are interested in this as well. Now the question is, can we create a feedback system where different constituents can play in that ecosystem?
For sure.
And incentivize better, use price as a lever to one, for the shoppers to communicate their values to industry, and then for industry to feed back to the shopper in a way that they benefit as well. So the idea being,
interesting,
create an ecosystem where everyone benefits, where it's a win. And that's why we call it Engage 3. It's a win for the shopper, it's a win for the brand, it's a win for the retailer, because it is possible when you create efficiencies for everyone to get a lower price to benefit.
That's fascinating. Now this is not, most companies aren't trying to service three completely different buyer sets like you are. I mean, that is a hard challenge in and of itself, just to be able to dream up, I'm going to help the consumer, I'm going to help the retailer and the manufacturer. That's a huge task to jump into. What have been some of the biggest challenges in trying to grow this business that you've had to face? Was it just understanding that?
That was, well, it in the beginning we were very it took a lot of iterations to understand if we wanted to be a B2C company or a B2B company.
Right. I bet.
And through some hard lessons, we realized, no, it has to be a B2B company.
Yeah.
And we support B2C companies, right? So
Gotcha.
we support retailers in that fashion. So so for us, it's really that was part of it. We almost lost the company in 2015 through the trying to take it to market as a B2C company. We just couldn't get it off the ground.
Yeah.
So we pivoted back to a B2B company, anchored into our relationships with our retailers to look at how do we use this market data we're collecting to really change the paradigm in how they're approaching their go-to-market. And through that, we were able to achieve really good product market fit, and get it recover and hit growth strides after that.
Well, I will have to say, I mean, for those listening and trying to figure out what your next step is in your growth journey, this is exactly how you do it, right? I mean, you go to the people paying you for the service and say, what can I do to make this better for you? Yeah. Right? I mean, that's essentially what you did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, it becomes very clear, oh, you don't really care about this stuff? You just want this. And they're like, yeah, just give me that stuff. And you're like, okay, cool. And I mean, how does it, am I guessing the right thing? I mean, I wasn't part of the...
You're absolutely right. With our first company, what got us off the ground was a relentless focus on the value proposition. How can we create more value for our client, and using the analytics to do it. So what we actually enabled clients to do was to give their shoppers lower prices and make more profit in while doing that. And so this, with what we're doing now, we took everything we learned from our last company, and that plus taking into account that the paradigm changed on competitive data.
Love it.
So now you're really taking, it's really like going from gasoline to rocket fuel.
Right.
Changing the data to a higher quality data, and then making some improvements to the engine as well. You really can accelerate it.
I love it. Now as you see other companies out there dealing with similar challenges, this was 7 years into your launch that you kind of ran into this problem, this identity crisis. How do you help people shortcut that? I mean, what do you suggest? What do you recommend to people who really aren't super clear as to who their perfect avatar is? How do they do what you did faster?
Yeah, I like your question. I'm trying to think what would we have done to make it faster. This all happens against a backdrop,
right?
And the backdrop at the time when we were growing it was the drumbeat was everything's changing. Yeah, if you remember that the app stores were blowing up with new apps,
Sure.
and people were getting 10,000 users, and they were getting, VCs were funding them. So the backdrop was we would visit with a VC. We actually back up a step. This is kind of a fun story, and it illustrates what we were trying to go down the path that everyone would say is a reasonable, smart path. And we approached a retailer with our idea back in 2008 when we started the company, and we showed him a mock-up of some PowerPoint slides of what we wanted to build, and we said, what do you think? And he said, I think our CEO would buy that. And we said, no, wait a minute. This is a PowerPoint deck. We haven't built anything, right? And he said, you don't understand. Our CEO got in front of the board a few months ago and said he was going to build something like this. And
how funny.
He hasn't delivered yet. So I think there's an opportunity. That took us straight into conversations to do a licensing deal where he would give us somebody to develop it. We would develop it. He would get a free license, and we'd have the IP.
Cool.
And so we got to the red line on the contract and pretty much waiting for signature, and the environment changed. And so he was no longer CEO.
Interesting.
And so what that did do, though, is give us the confidence that we can do it. We can get to market on this. If we got this far,
I love it.
We can go the rest. We can do it. So we funded it ourselves, and that's really when we. I think the biggest mistakes are made at the beginning, and I wouldn't necessarily say it was a mistake, but it was clearly we were taking an N=1 sample of data, and extrapolating that to the entire retail industry, saying that if one liked it, they'd all like it, and that was probably what I would counsel people on. Before you go all in, especially with your own money, make sure you've got an N of greater than 1. The VC at the time were telling us, we would fund something like this. So it wasn't hard to believe that we could get there. But the market was always just a little bit, closing something was just a little bit out of reach, because as soon as VC would say, as soon as you get to 10,000 users, we would fund it. We'd get to 10,000 users, and then they'd say, now the bar's changed. Now it's 100,000.
Oh my gosh.
So all of a sudden, it was just always like that, a little bit out of reach. And I
love it.
So,
so you stayed bootstrapped, and you pulled it off, and you're healthy and successful now. Tell me, taking a step back and looking at your growth journey and the challenges you faced, and kind of making those essential pivots. Was there someone in your circle that you looked at that kind of inspired you, that kept you motivated to keep on beating your head against that wall to figure out what the next play was?
It's this goes to one thing. I think advice I would give everyone is partner with a co-founder where you have some magic. And my brother has been we've done a few companies together, and he's always been the most out-of-the-box thinker in the room, and eternally optimistic. I mean, you just can't. He's relentless in his optimism, and so that has been. I would say that the creativity, not accepting the way things have been done, and he has a relentless focus on value as well. Those things really were. I think it really helped inspire a strong vision for the company.
Cool.
And then so pairing that with my skills are more operational, more people side, and so that it was a good pairing, and that I think was in terms of who I would credit with the inspiration and all, it goes directly there.
I love it. Well, congrats on finding a good partner in your own sibling, which is not hard to do. I mean, it is hard to do. That is like one of the hardest partners to actually have success with, is a family partner. But I'm so glad you've been able to pull that off and recognize each other's strengths and weaknesses, and build a strong foundation of how to move the company forward. Congrats to both of you.
Thanks.
Way to go.
Thank you.
Well, this has been a fantastic episode, and for those listening, there are so many ways, so many factors in your growth and scaling journey. And I hope that today's episode has given you license to explore in your own head, maybe ways of shortcutting your own journey into pivoting and redetermining what your clients actually want from your product offering, and making those moves, making those changes so that you're getting them exactly what they want at the price they want. This is a great conversation. Really, really great conversation. How do people follow you, Tim? Where are you most present online?
I'm not very present online, so LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. I have my contact information out there. Yeah.
Well, we'll put links to it in the show notes here. And for those listening, please take a minute to check in on him and see what he's got going on. The product is amazing. Go check out his website and figure out if there is a fit for you. If you're in retail, you probably should figure out what these guys are up to, because it'll help you in a lot of ways grow and scale your own business using his technology. So thanks so much for being here, Tim. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Todd.
Hey, what did you think of that interview? I loved that interview. What a fun founder, and what a fun journey. I honestly, when I hear people tell me that they've done multiple businesses with the same co-founder, I'm impressed. But to hear that he's run multiple businesses with a brother, I'm even more impressed. That is not an easy task. I personally would probably never do that with a brother or a son or a sister or a mom or anyone. I have a hard time with that. But what an impressive family to be able to do that. And what an impressive set of values. And so I think that it has a lot to do with the values that they run their business off of. I think there's a lot of backstory in there that obviously I don't know about. Couldn't dive all the way into the story. But what a fun business. What a neat product. I highly recommend you check it out. I spent some time digging into it this morning. And we got links in the show notes. But it's a very, very interesting product for retailers. It helps with a lot of research, pricing, valuations. And even though it may not be a fit for you and your business, it is the concept of what they do is important to be thinking about. What are your competitors doing? How is the product offering that you provide being seen in the marketplace? There's so many things to be thinking about that he talked about in this interview, no matter what your business model is, that will help you in your growth and scaling journey. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you take some time to subscribe, like, follow, send this episode to someone that needs to hear it, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks for being here.